People of my generation grew up believing a college degree guaranteed success. Now people with 2 degrees are driving for DoorDash.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Bright, motivated people doing everything right, only to find out the finish line moved.
Tonie has spent her life helping people climb the ladder to success, but that ladder looks different now.
Because the rungs are further apart, and fewer people can afford to reach the next one.
Next, we'll talk about what's happened and whether college is still worth it. Well, welcome back to Half Right. This episode is going to be a little bit different, maybe a little more serious than some episodes, but because we're talking about a serious subject, which is, are college degrees worth it anymore? And we happen to have someone living in this house who's worked in education her entire life, so she can probably provide a perspective that many of us can't provide. So we could start out by, could you just give us a little insight into your background of your education journey?
So I've mentioned before in this channel that I was born and raised in Mexico City, and in fact, I studied my first year of college in Mexico. I was going to be an anthropologist. Then when I moved to the States and learned English, I switched completely to computer science. That was going to be my major. Anyway, long story short, went back to Mexico, came back years later, and pursued a degree in linguistics. That's my area. But when I learned English and went back to Mexico for a few years, life, right, just presented this opportunity for me to teach English and to executives. So all of a sudden, my very first day, and here I am in my early 20s teaching a group of executives, most of them twice my age, most of them males. And so I just got started, and it was really a crazy experience. I almost saw myself, from the ceiling. And I blinked, and it was over, right? The class was over. And when I got up and to bid everyone goodbye, they all said, "But you're going to be my teacher, right? You're going to stay with us, right?" So obviously I did something right because they liked the way I taught the class. But anyway, that was a few years ago. And since then, right, I realized that my path was education.
Yeah. And you've advanced through the years from teachers at English schools to associate professor to, when we met, you were doing your work to get tenured. And for the past, 12 or so years, you've been a dean. So you've advanced through the ranks and you have a perspective that many people don't have. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this, which is our college degrees still worth it? And some of the problems that we can address is, number one, the cost. The tuition has gone out of this world. It's just ridiculous. Students are graduating in massive debt. Return on investment of the degrees. Not all degrees now are created equal. And some people, there, like we said in the opening, it's like there are plenty of college graduates, who are working as baristas or selling chucks at Foot Locker, but so that's also a problem. There's a culture, the blue-collar culture perceives the university culture looks down on the blue-collar element and doesn't value what they contribute to society. And bloated administration is like there's far too many people working on some college campuses that do little more than go to work to draw a good paycheck. They're not doing much more than warming up a seat with a corpulent fanny. So that's a mouthful, but I'm going to give you your chance to respond. Are college degrees still worth it?
So I think we need to start by defining college, right? And I
Okay.
think that many times when I hear all of the criticisms that you mentioned, we're not really talking about community colleges or technical colleges. We're
Right.
talking about
Uh-huh.
universities,
Ex-
particularly private universities, right? So let me start by saying I have taught and I am an administrator at a community college, a public community college.
Yeah.
That limits the amount that students are charged for tuition, that serves populations that are mostly on financial aid, Pell Grants, scholarships. So, and many of whom only go to college part-time because they have families, they have jobs. And so we're talking a very different population than I think what you're talking about. Now, universities, that's a different story, right? Even public universities have become more expensive. Tuition has increased significantly. And I also have to say that the main criticism for college is for private institutions that primarily have full-time students who live in dorms and spend all of their time on campus.
Yeah,
right?
and if I can interject just a moment, I did research a few statistics for this, and the situation you're talking about, students living on dorms in private universities, the national average for that is $43,000 a year, and there's a significant number of families that don't even make that much in a year. So that's where your massive student loan debt comes from. It's a sort of in that situation, you've got two choices. If a student wants to go to that kind of college and have that kind of situation, either you need to come from a family that has money, or you need to be willing to go in debt. And that's just not a feasible choice. That's just not a choice that any young person should be presented with or have to decide on.
Yeah. So through my years as an administrator, I have talked to many students, and many of whom in my community college have been awarded scholarships, right? Full ride scholarships to very prestigious universities, and still they have to turn them down because that's not enough. Because they still have to live, right? They don't have enough money to live and for room and board. So again, we're talking about really apples and oranges, very different.
Yeah.
Now, going back to some of the issues that you mentioned, I think also the criticism is for these private universities, particularly liberal arts, where sure students may complete a liberal arts education, but for most jobs, a bachelor's degree is not enough, right? In those pathways, and so they end up, working in low-paying jobs, maybe while they continue going to school.
Yeah, so a liberal arts degree is like now, and I can joke about it because I did get a liberal arts degree, but I like to say an engineering degree pays great, and a philosophy degree teaches you how to be great at explaining why you can't pay. Which, unfortunately, that's not far from the truth. The push now is for STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. That's where the future lies. That's where the good, decent paying jobs that you can actually earn a living are at in the future. What about liberal arts? Is it just a thing of the past? Is it devalued to the point that we shouldn't even worry about it anymore?
So I think that even those STEM degrees have a sprinkling of liberal arts in their degrees, right? Most universities require a core curriculum that includes some history, some political science, some literature. So even those, STEM majors do have exposure, I would say, to liberal arts, even if it is not in great depth. And that's a good thing. You want a good, a well-rounded person, right? Somebody who can not only, be very good at the technical stuff, but have an appreciation for the world around them, appreciation for culture, literature, art, music.
Yeah, it's like I agree that the liberal arts, the humanities, still have value. They always will. It's like having an education in the humanities or make my life more interesting and enriching. And for instance, history, yeah, the old idiom of if we don't know our history, we're doomed to repeat it. It I don't want. I would hate to think that liberal arts just becomes valueless and it stops being taught. And you even mentioned that some of the STEM programs incorporate it to the point where they call it STEAM, science, technology, engineering, math, and
Arts and math.
arts and math. Okay, I can't spell, sorry. Liberal arts degree here.
English major.
Yeah, English, philosophy minor. That's why I could make the earlier joke about philosophy degrees. But anyway, so are colleges doing enough now to prepare students for actual jobs?
Right. Again, I am partial to 2-year colleges, right? Because you have both tracks. You have the track that gives a foundation to a university degree. And when people say, do we need a college degree? Absolutely. I want a nurse, a doctor, an engineer who has a college degree because I want to be safe. I want to be driving in good streets and good bridges, right? And
Yeah.
when I go into a building, I want to make sure that that's a well-built building.
I've heard some people argue that, well, higher education is the problem. Well, that's just insane. No society in the history of the world has ever been improved by lowering the education standard. That's not a politically biased opinion. That's a measurable fact. It's like you don't societies don't get better lives by being dumber. The education is important. It's just the perception, I think, of the university culture is what gets people on different sides of the fence.
For sure. And again, a college education, again, I'm talking about my experience and having seen many, many students. In a 2-year degree, again, you have the option of pursuing a transfer major, like, again, engineering, etc. But you also have the option of pursuing a workforce education degree. So I always joke that my sister, with an Associate of Applied Science, which is a workforce degree, makes more money than I make with a graduate degree. So I think, again, it depends on what the goal is. I think ideally, higher education provides different exit ramps and entrance ramps so that you pursue a degree, you're able to work if you need to, but then you can easily come back and continue with that pathway.
Yeah, and I think you would probably agree with me when I say that community colleges are undervalued. 4-year colleges simply aren't for everybody, and not everybody needs them. I mean, some people should be steered onto the path of learning a trade or learning a skill that they can learn in 2 years, and community colleges are a great place to start.
So what a contradiction, right?
Yeah.
And in the messaging, because on the one hand you said, oh, colleges are, what's the point of college? But at the same time, no, you do need to, like you said, steer some people to identify what their interests and talents lie.
Exactly. Not everybody was born to appreciate medieval literature. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but some people are more geared toward a mechanical aptitude, and those people should be steered in a different direction than the medieval literature crowd.
So, as I said before, so when talking to students who are trying to choose which pathway to choose, we ask them not only to identify their interests, because your interests change all the time, but your talents. What are you good at? When you have free time, what do you like doing? And that's usually, where that would take you. And be very realistic and open, transparent. Yeah, you love music. That's wonderful. Continue that pathway. That may not be lucrative right away. You may have to do some jobs that perhaps is not what you have in mind at the beginning. But if that's what you love, who am I to tell somebody not to pursue that?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with pursuing your dreams. It's easy to tell somebody to, you need to pursue your dreams. It's a little harder to tell them, how are you going to pay for this? So it's perfectly fine to pursue your dreams. I'm an example. I was always geared toward the creative side of things, but most of my career, I earned it by largely being self-taught, learning technology and engineering. That's where I made most of my actual money, not from the creative side. Fortunately, I'm making a little money on the creative side now, but I couldn't have earned a living doing that. So I think there's nothing wrong with pursuing your dreams, but you should also live in reality, be practical, and learn a skill that you can actually make money doing.
So going back to your original question, is a college degree still worth it? I think absolutely. There's no question that somebody with a degree, the return on investment eventually, right? Even whatever major will eventually pay off. Now there's some that will pay off right away. Right? You get a job right away. You get a very tangible. So in my college, we have HVAC, we have welding, we have ultrasound tech, we have, all of these careers where the student graduates and they're already hired. In fact, we have to make sure that they continue until they get the degree, because sometimes the company where they're doing an internship or an apprenticeship, they already want to hire them. So again, is it worth it? Absolutely. Is it, again, do we need to define college more specifically when we criticize and when we, find fault with the current structure? Absolutely. And even public institutions, particularly universities, they're not cheap.
Yeah. So, that the sticking point on the main sticking point on this, is college worth it argument anymore is the tuition. It's out of this world. It's ridiculous. Some students, even that has pursued master's degrees, are getting out of school with six-figure debt. So here's a controversial question we can touch on quickly. Should college be free?
So you and I have talked about this.
Yeah, we
many
both
times.
have our opinions on this.
Yeah. And again, on the one hand, when we say college, we have to define what should be free. When I look at many of my students, will it benefit them for college to be free? Absolutely. Many of them who work 2 jobs, who are coming to school part-time, who are parents, absolutely. On the other hand, when something is given to you for free, you may not appreciate it or apply yourself as much. So that is where I wonder if it is not necessarily free, but at a discount.
Well, and my opinion on this, that, college in some other countries is free and it works, but I've lived in this country for 63 plus years, so I kind of have a feel for how the culture is here. And just like you said, if you give some people some things for free, it devalues it. And I just feel like we're going to devalue college, the entire college experience, if we give it away for free here. However, having said that, it should be affordable again. It should be affordable to the point that a motivated student, even if they have no money, even if they don't come from money, they should be able to work their way through college and come out the other side with no debt. So that's my opinion. It should not be free, but it should be affordable.
I completely agree.
So let's wrap this up with with a question you've already answered, but let's put it in a different perspective. Let's say a student comes to you tomorrow, says, Dean Tonie, I want to get an education, but I'm just not sure college is worth it. What would you tell them?
Well, we can look at data, right? Data are so powerful. So we know data proves that the only way for a student to move up into middle class, perhaps, is having a college education. Again, it might not be tomorrow, but in the long run, that's definitely a good investment.
To interrupt for just 1 second, another statistic I found that's verifiable is that a college graduate with a BA degree, on average, over the course of their lifetime, earns about $1 million more than someone with only a high school degree. So you bring up a valid point. Okay, please continue.
Well, no, I mean, that's exactly my point, that sure, the career that you choose has a lot to do with how soon you can get that return on investment. But definitely much better than just a high school education. So we need to continue promoting. And maybe when somebody makes these, sweeping statements, right? Like college should be free. Or on the other hand, college education is not worth it anymore. Well, those are very extreme.
Right.
And the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Yes,
exactly.
It is with many things.
And bottom line is not everybody needs a 4-year degree, and community colleges are undervalued. And one thing we should make a distinction on, when we say community college, we mean like state-run community colleges, not for-profit colleges.
No, please.
So maybe you could clarify exactly that without naming any names. We don't want to get sued here, but make the distinction on the difference between a community college and a for-profit college.
Right. So unfortunately, I always tell my students, if you want to stay away from a college that when you log on to their webpage, the tuition is not easily available. If you need to provide your email address and your contact information from them to tell you how much it's going to cost, beware. They may have shiny commercials, they may have shiny iPads that they give away, but in the end, the cost is tremendous, and many of them are not what we call regionally accredited. And so if the student does not complete in that particular school, and they want to transfer to another one, those credits might not apply. So yes, please beware of private. Not all of them, of course. There's some very reputable, but that's when you need to do your homework. Public institutions are held to a very high standard. And so you can be sure, right, that if you attend a public institution, you are safe. It might cost you more or less, but at least those credits are absolutely solid.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we made that distinction. Okay, well, this has been an informative little chat. Thank you, Dean Tonie, a.k.a. Baby. So thanks a lot. And college, in many ways, is still worth it.
Absolutely. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Do it, or I send Bootsy after you. You know, for a serious topic, that actually felt pretty good.
Well, that's because it's the first time that you let me finish a sentence.
See, back to normal already.